All right.
Okay. This is May 14th, Zoom conference on emergency board meeting. First, Mike, I'd like to thank you for compiling the minutes, even though we have the recorded that can be reviewed. You've done a nice job of getting the minutes of each of these meetings around for us so we can go back and look at those. So thank you for that.
Well, it's easy to have them recorded. You know, once you record them, you can go back and make sure you got it exact. So it's a big help.
Okay.
Time consuming though.
Okay, let's move on to item number 2 on their updated phased reopening procedures. Michael?
I sent to you the reopening procedures, phase 1, 2, and 3 with the agenda today. Has everyone had a chance to look them over?
Yep.
Yep.
You know,
Are you going to go through it, Mike, or because I only had 2 questions?
I don't know that I need to. I can. Maybe I can just answer questions, but essentially, I guess big picture is, you know, right now we're operating a certain way. The very next governor's order, whatever, if it rescinds something or relaxes or changes policies, I think at that time, that's when we take phase 2. And phase 2 is going to remain single rider golf carts, but it is going to allow us to open up the clubhouse. And so we're going to have to take precautions there. We have to be ready for this, you know, because, you know, Brianna and I were talking today. We discussed this in the staff budget meeting this morning. You know, we're thinking that we're not going to take reservations for lunch, but I mean, the whole layout, the whole format is really gonna change for how we do things if this thing continues. For the remainder of the summer, we would let golfers come in, obviously, but we're gonna have to limit, you know, who sits where. And you know, for dinner, we're gonna have to, you know, obviously remove tables and chairs and keep things apart, and then take reservations. And you know, I'm not quite sure yet how to control the members when they all start coming in, you know, kind of piling next to each other. It's going to have to be a lot of communication, and it's just going to be managers on duty, you know, having to remind people. But I'm not sure how that's going to work yet. And I can tell you, there's no other club right now that we've spoken to. We've talked to activities directors, membership directors, club managers. No one has any. They don't know where to go with this just yet. No one knows how to do it. So we're trying to think about it because we're getting the budgets together right now. So, you know, we'll probably start water aerobics right away. And I think also at that time, there needs to be a decision made on guests, on reciprocals, on quarantining, and on, you know, PGA Pass. Because once we start to allow guests, once we start to allow family, you know, coming back and playing on the golf course, once we allow reciprocals from some other club, I have to also remove the quarantine restrictions from our membership. You know, if they come down here from someplace, I can't tell them they have to stay in their home for 2 weeks, you know, and not play golf when we let somebody from down the street come here or someone from another club comes here. We don't know where they've been. So I think.
Why don't we talk about that under the next article, which is guests and reciprocals, because that's where it's all covered.
Yeah, we can. I just want to mention that in here. Because that's where we would want to make the changes in phase 2. And then I've got phase 2 right now going all the way until 2021 in the fall. Now, Jeff and I have discussed that we anticipate that, you know, the single rider cart is all next season. And then, you know, revenues from tournaments starting in May, you know, we'll probably go back to normal. We're talking like 15 golf tournaments for next summer. We'll start to recoup and get.
For clarification then, and that's you're talking about it. Because what I read into there, and I read through everything, it sounded to me like we're going to basically do phase 2 all the way through the next fiscal year.
Yes.
And therefore, is that what you're going to use for budgeting?
Yes.
That's because that's kind of restricted. I mean, that basically is going to kill all events.
Correct. Now,
So we won't have any events next year. We won't have any of that income at all from all of this summer play. We won't have any income from any events, including, go ahead.
no, I know what you're saying. And you, there was discussion about, let's have a worst case scenario here.
Right.
And I told them this morning, I said, this way you budget is you got to, they're going down to the granular level here as far as number of golfers or number of people that we can put in a room for a tournament and how far these people have to be apart. And so they're actually just multiplying this stuff out and coming out with dollar figures. It's not like we took last year's figures and then we're just bumping it up by 3%. I mean, this is, again, granular level. So
We don't have Jeff on here, do we? He's not, he didn't.
no, I can get him on if you want.
Well, because, for instance, I think he should be somewhat involved because we can't have any MGA opening day. We can't, because we have, we don't have enough carts for all this. So,
Yeah, no, I understand. And Jeff has got this, I'm going to have him get on here in a minute because he's got this down to a T right now.
Okay,
But
Mike, just a second. Jim, did you have a question into that?
Well, I don't know if I had a question. Well, I guess I did. I mean, that'd be up to the MGA if they want to cancel events. We may not have the 200 and you might not be able to see everybody for dinner, but to have a MGA opening day, it may only be 140, 150 golfers,
but we can't do that, Jim, because we won't have the carts.
you have to ride. I mean, you won't do it all at once. I'm saying you're going to have to change your events. Correct. You will not be able to have shotgun events with all the golfers. You'll have to change your events.
Bob, you had something to add? I'll get you a second, Bill.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I think that, what Mike and the staff are doing, and I think what I'd like to charge them to do is what he's doing, is assume, some draconian assumptions so that we come up with numbers that don't look so hot, and maybe even have to structure next year's fees based on that information. But knowing that as time goes on, things are going to change. And hopefully we'll be able to open things up more, and we can even adjust the budget as we get to August. We don't have to make final decisions today. We'll know more information by then.
Okay,
So
Bill?
it's a good idea for Mike to go down the road that he's talking about, and then, hopefully it will be better than what we're assuming.
Thanks. Bill?
Well, I think Vince makes a good point about the MGA day, and there's similar things that go along with that. Perhaps like an MGA day, instead of having a morning shotgun for anybody who wants to play and then have a great lunch, hey, maybe it has to be split into two separate shotguns, a morning event, an afternoon event. Maybe there's a different way to accommodate all those players, and perhaps we wouldn't lose all that income, but we just may have to do it a little differently.
Okay, Vince?
My question about it wasn't so much, my really question wasn't about, okay, what are we going to do? I just wanted to understand, and my question was, because this to me looks like what we would consider to be the worst case scenario. Okay, if we had to go through all next year with single card play, limited reciprocal guests and all of that, which I think we're going to talk about that. I think that's something to be that we should consider. Then it's going to cost this. And I think that's a good worst case scenario. That was my understanding, because then we could start talking about, okay, if we can be walking. I'll guarantee we're not going to have walking. So it's going to be 72. We're going to have a gap in there. And then we're going to have another possibly 72 for MGAs. But all we can accommodate then is 144 golfers. We have 350 members in the MGA. And at any one time, there's over 200 plus. Okay. So,
Bill, did you put your hand up again?
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I think Mike made the statement that he foresees single cart play through all of next season. So does that mean until April of 21, Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Jeff, thank you for joining us. You want to throw anything in here? What about additional carts? Can we, what's the advantage? Do we have a possibility of additional carts?
Well, that's what I'm working on now. Our lease ends this year. So Mr. Ziegler and I is looking at 90 carts. We can fit those comfortably into the cart barn. Plus they only take 4 hours to charge. These are the new lithium batteries from Club Car. So we can get 54 holes out of each cart.
Jeff, can you move a little closer to the mic, Jeff, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
This is, we can get hopefully 90 carts. They'll store very well in the cart barn. They take 4 hours to charge in the barn for a full charge. We can get close to 3 rounds comfortably out of those. I know in the season, we're probably going to get 2.5. But my plan was, we're talking about the MGA. We just looked. I looked in the last 3-4 years, we've had 4 events that had over 167 players, and that was a pick your own foursome. That would be, the MGA is probably the biggest event, but if we had the 90 carts, we could get all of them out at that day. I'm thinking if we have the MGA for their one-time luncheon or dinner, they would come back to dinner that night. You know, that would be with Josh. With the ladies, the most we have is about 100. We could take care of them comfortably that morning as well. They could come back that night. Now, this hadn't been discussed with any association yet. I'm just doing all the preliminaries, just trying to get that in order. I do have walking in between those two, in between those single rider carts to generate some more income, because I think when we do that with the play, we're looking at probably close to 190 players. We do probably about 270 players. So you're probably going to get some walkers if they wish to play. That's going to happen. And that'll generate some revenue. But I'm looking at single cart riders, probably around 30,000. January, February, March, we will be under budget or not the same. We'll be losing about 30,000 a month, probably easily. I don't foresee guests coming January, February, March if we do a single cart rider. That's something for the board to discuss, but I would hate to have 180 some players and then a member bring 3 guests and then a member could not play because the member is bringing guests. I don't guess coming that much. I do see guests coming in November, December, but I don't think in January, February, and March.
Okay.
Those are kind of my things I'm working on. The budget. The budget's planning for November through April. Single cart riders, May through October, the rest of the year. I've already got 15 tournaments booked for 2021. I've already have the summer tournaments booked later in September and October of this year, hoping maybe something happens. But if not, they know that we have to reschedule or cancel those events because we can't have a shotgun for them.
Okay.
Well, they do not wish to do it without a shotgun because they want to lunch and they want to have, the dinner or something inside. But we do have 15 available for 2021. I've already booked those.
All right. Bob, actually, what Mike's trying to prepare that, which Vince referred to as the worst case scenario, that's going to become the baseline. So anything we can expand beyond that would be to our advantage. But in looking at the budget, the assessments for next year, you really wanted that baseline. Isn't that correct?
Correct. I think that's where we need to go. And then, but as I said, we've got from now till August to see if we can get some more concrete information and make adjustments.
Okay, good. Thanks. Okay, Mike?
Any other questions for Jeff?
Any other questions for me?
Anybody? I guess not. Thanks, Jeff.
All
Okay.
right, thanks. Did a good job. All right.
All right, any other questions for Mike pertaining to the phase setup that he sent us?
But what I am going to do, I'm going to call a Zoom meeting with the MGA and talk to them about on one of these Zooms, and maybe include Jeff in that. Would include Jeff, of course, but to kick around some of the things he's thinking about to see what the MGA members think.
Okay.
It's a good idea.
Bob, were you going to say something?
Yeah, and if we're still on the first item on the agenda, the phased reopening, when we get to the second phase, hopefully in June, I just listened in on a webinar, webcast, whatever it was, the National Club Association. I don't know if Mike had a chance to listen to that as well. They talked about a lot on technology today, and they also talked about a lot on health and safety relative to technology. And I think we really ought to be thinking about, very quickly, if we're thinking about going to phase 2 as early as June this year, of making some investments and some technology that make the workplace safer for our employees and the clubhouse safer for our members. Things like, have we got the right air handling and purification system, or does that need to be upgraded? What about handheld devices for all our servers, individual ones? So each server has their own handheld device. You see them in restaurants all over the place nowadays. Mm-hmm. And so they don't have to go to a workstation, whatever you want to call it, that everybody else is using and start touching that. And we could go on and on. They talked a lot about the possibility of self-serve types of things. Would members be willing to order from the table on their handheld without having a server, and then maybe go pick it up at some designated spot? Maybe not. It's certainly not for dinner, but maybe that helps us get going quicker at lunch. I don't want to go through all the things because I don't remember them all. I made a few notes, but I think we ought to be thinking about the health and safety of our members and employees first, and maybe we need to spend a little bit of money now. You're not budgeting it for next year that we have to get something new in the budget. Let's allocate some money as soon as possible when we figure out what it is. I'm not saying I know what it is. I'm just saying that's what I heard. And this was just an hour ago. So Mike and I haven't talked. I haven't talked to anybody about this, but I just think it ought to be out there as we talk about this phase reopening.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Hey, Mike, a lot of the restaurants here, instead of moving tables out because they had no place to store them,
We don't either.
they are putting nothing but painter's tape and a big X on the other tables and pulling the chairs away to create that social distancing without having to move all that equipment. I know Josh was saying he was trying to find places to store those.
Yeah, we don't have any places to store things.
So if they just mark and vacate that by pulling the chairs and putting some kind of marking on that table, it can stay in place, just not be utilized. And then we've got to have that controlled hostess at the front where you can only let people in and have marked off as people come in the clubhouse where they have to maintain their distance. So I think we can learn some of that from some of the restaurants that are doing a very nice job of reopening, the ones that decide to. About 60% of them here in town are not opening because they were still in the 25% capacity, which just didn't make sense. Once they're up at 50%, I think most of the restaurants will be open with that same type of options. Okay, anything else? And Bob, we look forward to getting some Cliff's notes on some of that stuff you listened on that webinar. Sounds like it was pretty in depth.
Just if you happen to go through again and just make sure that you understand what we're trying to do here on all three of these phases. I'll probably update this and move it from the fall 2021 to probably like April or May of 2021, just because once we get to that time period, the members are going home. It's less play, and we have these tournaments, and I think we'll be able to do. We'll be able to start bringing in some more income. I think by that time we'll be some of the limitations will be off of us. But if you have questions on it, if you see something, send me an email and say, I think you may want to adjust this or that, just so we're on the same page here.
All right, thanks. Are we ready to move on to the guest access to amenities?
Yes.
That's really a muddied situation. So you want to kick that off, Mike? And I think.
Yeah, I think we've just pretty much come to the conclusion that, we can't just start reciprocal season without changing, all the policies we have regarding limitations here, restrictions. So, there's been talk, I'd love to get PGA Pass play in here, but there's no way we can do that and also maintain the quarantine requirements from our members who, there's a lot of them that rent here. They rent their units in season and they come back in the summertime. I've got quite a number of people that are coming back. They're saying, we'll see you next week. We can't wait to get up here and spend some time. So, I got a lot of them coming from New York. And, if we want to change some of these policies before, June or before we go to the second phase, we need to change it for everything. I just don't see how we could tell them, you can't play golf for 2 weeks, but then we can let, a PGA Pass guy come in here. I think that's just common sense. Yes.
I listened to our governor this morning on one of the news stations, and he said that they're going to have to make a decision because they want to open up tourism and like Disneyland and other places. And he said, in order to open up tourism, you got to take that restriction off on quarantine. Okay. Because otherwise they're not going to come here. No one's going to come down and take a vacation if they can't go everywhere. All right. So that's an issue to be considered partially in the timing of it. But he was very hopeful that by June they could start opening up tourism in June. That was his comment. No, that was his position.
Paula?
Listening to you about Disneyland, I just got an email yesterday. We were supposed to go on a Disney cruise in July. All Disney cruises have been canceled in July. So and that's fine. I'm not upset about that. But my question is, who determines if Disneyland is going to open? Is it the governor or is it Disneyland Corporation? I mean, it seems to me that if they were going to open, they'd open everything. I don't know. Does the governor control that?
It was Disneyland has a plan to open up like restaurants do, okay, and have spacing and all of that, but they can't do it until the governor releases that. So it was Disneyland that would like to begin opening. Not just Disneyland though. You got all the other tourist attractions that would like to start opening, and the restaurants would like them to start them opening because one feeds the other. But the governor has to, my point was, his point, he said they would have to release that restriction on quarantine for all that to happen.
I'd say also there's a couple of states that have filed against the state government saying they have a right to open if they want. We'll see how those come out also, because that could have a big impact if those rule in favor of the independent operators. And even when they open back up, a lot of the restaurants, they've done special reports here all this week, are shutting back down because people are still very apprehensive, and the tourism in Florida thinks it's going to be the same way, that not as many people, you're not going to get a very good capture rate because people will be worried even if they do open those up. And I'm not saying I'm against opening them up. I'm just saying people are a little hesitant about going out and pretending like nothing was there, because it is there. Anybody else? Dennis?
Guests are staying, and members are coming down and staying a longer period of time than a PGA or a reciprocal. They're coming over for the day. Is there any practicality in requesting that guests and members who are coming down for an extended period could have a COVID test, a virus test before they come, at least to say that when they left their homes, they were okay?
I guess the question is, can they get one?
Well, according to your president, you can.
I mean, there is a drive-through testing spot in a couple places around here. You know, you theoretically you can go, and if they have a test, you can get a test. But I don't know that everyone can get a test. So we can ask. You can certainly ask them to.
Because members and guests are going to spend a lot of time circulating in the neighborhoods as compared to a golf guest.
Although there's probably some kind of HIPAA regulation against testing somebody, and then we all know what their medical situation is.
I think
You got Jim over here.
Jim's going to check in on that.
I can tell you, we as Spring Run cannot tell people they have to have a test before they come in.
I'd say request.
When the government tells them they have to have a test, the ACLU is going to be running up to the Supreme Court, you know, and then they'll decide that. But the government may, but we as Spring Run, we could check with the attorney, but it'd be a waste of money. We cannot tell them you have to have a test before you come into the Spring Run. That would be. We can ask the attorney, but we can't do it.
I didn't say that. I said request.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vince?
Yeah, my question is, you know, with the way we're handling now the carts and the way we're handling social distancing and everything else, does it really matter? Because, you know, we're talking, in fact, when we start talking about reciprocal and PGA Pass, which I'm an advocate of, okay? Because I think what we're doing now by spraying down these carts and cleaning the carts as we are, having the individuals remove all the trash out themselves, take their bags back and forth, social distancing. I think that's no different now than these restaurants opening up to 25 people and allowing people. They're not saying you have to, you know, you've got to take a test or anything ahead of time. I believe that we've taken that necessary step already, that we make that almost a moot point. All right. Even if somebody is a carrier or does have it and we don't know it, we're keeping them at a distance and we're spraying and treating everyone. So you go, Jim. That's all.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree with Vince, and I hate to use this word, but really you have to assume everybody has it. And that's why you got to stay to 6 feet and everything in there. I mean, when you go out to the store or whatever, you got to assume everybody in the store has it, even though most likely they don't. And that's basic with the social distances. You got to assume they have it, and you got to stay far enough away so you don't get it. That's the way. Until we get vaccination stuff like that, I mean, that's the way I live, and that's the way we're going to have to do business, is assuming there are people that are coming in that have the virus. So we have to protect everybody else. If they have the virus, they come, they go. No, they don't infect anybody else to the best of our ability.
Jim, that's an excellent point. And I think in some of our communication that goes out, that's a good point of reference to make, is that you have to assume that everybody has the virus and practice the social distancing. I think that's a key point. Thanks for bringing it up, Jim. Anybody else? Judy?
Well, then I think we're ready to let owners have guests. I mean, if we are ready to take that step to remind them they got a social distance, and we've got the restrictions at the pool, and we've got the restrictions with the food, then the next step is to let them have their guests. And
we've kind of had a transition on that too, that we've been practicing this on a very regulated piece, and now it's time to open it up a little bit with those same practices taking place. I think that's assume that everybody has the virus and practice your social distancing. I think that's key. Anybody?
We're saying
Bob?
that is when we open up for phase 2, right? We're not trying to do it any sooner than June 1st.
That's up to you. I'm personally saying, based upon what I know as far as the governor is looking at, is they're not going to phase 2 until at least June, maybe even end of June. I don't know yet. But when they do, I think we need to be prepared to make a number of changes, and we should just be able to shift into gear and begin to eliminate the quarantine rules and be allowing guests and PGA Pass and reciprocals when that happens. When we're also starting to allow use of the clubhouse. Of course, so.
Vince?
Today's the 14th of May. We have guests that have been down here now for months, okay, that are here now, but we don't allow to use it. If you've looked at I wish Jeff was still here, but the tee sheets, they're thinning out very quickly now, okay? I don't actually know when the actual one, but I actually see maybe in the morning there aren't any openings, but there are openings for in the afternoon. And there's openings for walking, even though a lot of people are walking, by the way, they're still walking. But this place is thinning out. You know, the sooner we could get PGA Pass in here, all right, however limited the number we could have, I think from a financial standpoint is beneficial. Now, June is only 2 weeks away. So, you know, if we had to wait, it's not the end of the world. But I think that, you know, we ought to be ready, and we ought to let Jeff know that there's a point out here at some point when he can start filling up these tee sheets with PGA Pass, if it's available. I know that he has a concern that we're not going to be able to get the PGA Pass because we changed that rule for members to be able to book after the first day. A member can book a tee time. I don't think it's an issue now at all, but a member can book a tee time now if he hasn't got on Chelsea. Okay, if he did, which he didn't get a tee time on Chelsea, or he doesn't like his tee time on Chelsea. Okay, well, no, if he doesn't like his tee time, it's canceled. He can't. But if he didn't put in on Chelsea and wants to book the next day for an open tee time, he can, just like a PGA. Jeff made me aware of the fact that he actually tells certain groups 10 days in advance, so many days in advance, that they'll be able to play, has been in the past. Otherwise, they won't book with us. And now he can't do that because of this change we've made. Now, I've got a little back and forth with him. I think the carts are the more restrictive than that. That it's really the limited carts, because we still could put people up in the back nine. But I think we have to be, ready to do it and let Jeff think when he can do it, what he can do, and let him go as soon as he can.
Well, again, Jim, I'll get to you in just a second here. I have no problem with us moving ahead on this piece within 7 days or 10 days or whatever. And it can't be just because we're trying to capture the revenue. We need the revenue, there's no doubt. But we have to maintain our social responsibility through this whole thing. We don't want to blow what we've done so far that's been very successful for us. But I am in favor of probably a date earlier than June 1, as long as we stress the social distancing with the philosophy that Jim talked about in that piece. Jim?
Two different things on golfing. I got no problem of starting to allow, actually, even maybe allow guest golfing now, and then phase it in, and then I don't know how many guests we actually have down there, and then PGA when we get space. But the fact, and it's come up, and Mike and I had a discussion on it yesterday about if allowing guests, to participate. Now with the pool and our pools and stuff, we may want to still not allow guests to use the pool. I mean, the pool's a limited resource. So if I have 4 or 5 guests down here and I go to the pool and there's 6 of us, all of a sudden I used half of the pool. I don't think this summer that'll be a problem, but come December, it'll be a problem. We may, even though we allow guest golfing, we may have to limit the pool to members only. And if we open up, other sports and stuff, because they're limited. Before, we could put as many people in the pool as we wanted to. Now, if we're saying there are only 15 people in the pool, I would think come December, we might have a problem. And even with golfing, come December, like Jeff said, or whenever it comes, we may have to, you can have guests come down here, you can have guests go to the clubhouse, but we may not be able to allow guests to go to the pool or to golf. That's something I think we got to take as time, what we allow guests to do and what we don't allow guests, so we're not locking out, you know, bona fide members from activities.
Okay. Bill?
Hey, Vince, here's a question for you and Mike and Jeff. Do you think we should rethink that policy regarding members having the ability to call the day after Chelsea is run? I mean, if we had the ability to get, let's just say 20 or 24 PGA players that are on Jeff's, let's say, favorite list versus 3 or 4 members, might we want to reconsider that?
To answer that, I thought about that, and I've had somewhat of a discussion with Jeff. I think as long as we're limited to 72 carts at a time, right? It's kind of it doesn't apply because we have ownership down here now, and I don't think we can actually facilitate them at this point. We'll have to see, because in the summertime, we do still have a substantial number of owners that play golf every day, okay? And I don't think we really have the room with only 72 carts. If we had more carts, then yes, I would agree with that, you know, because, you know, even when I proposed it, I was really focusing on October, November, December. I wasn't focusing on, because it's not, normally, it's not even an issue starting May 1 through November, through end of October, middle of October. It's not even an issue. So yes, but with limited number of carts, I think it's a moot point. And I think Jeff.
And Vince, you put that, when you proposed that was for protection of the owners. So we don't want to misconstrue protection of the owners and trade it off for the revenue in that piece if it's not, because that's the reason that amendment came out and was changed, was to protect the owners on their tee slots. So I think we have to keep that in mind too. We might want to temporarily suspend that during this time for a time frame and see how it goes. But that was originally put in to protect the owners on the tee times. And we knew then it would have an impact on our revenues because it would take some of those others out. Jim?
Well, actually, I think what Vince is trying to say is it's a moot point now, because he can't, even if we had that in there, he can't block off 20 tee times, because the owner, then he would be blocking owners off of Chelsea or whatever. 10 days in advance, he doesn't know if there's 10 tee times going to be open. If we had all the carts, he knows the owner's only going to fill up this many. He can rest assured there's going to be 10 tee times open. Now he can't do it until later on. And if he can do that, he can book them. You know, it's the missing carts. It's not the rule. And we can look at it. The rule, I think, will work fine if we have all the carts. If we had all the carts, he could be doing it. It's the carts that are hurting. And even if we took the rule off, I don't know how he could say 10 days in advance that you can have 10 tee times, because then I'm telling you what, if owners got blocked out of the Chelsea because they couldn't golf that day because of Chelsea, and then they looked on the sheet and there's half of it PGA passes, we're gonna, you know,
right,
we'll really be hearing about it.
Yeah, Bill?
Were we not going to try to slot those PGA players in the afternoon though? So they'd be part of that second wave.
Yeah.
But the people that book in advance want to play first thing in the morning. Okay. But there's no problem. There's no problem. I would say right now, I'm a proponent of right now, you know, once Chelsea runs, okay, and Chelsea's done, and if you can then backfill with PGA Pass, I think it's a good idea. I would even say during the current, actually, even next year, let's say we got 100 some odd golf cart, or the full complement of golf carts, I would say, you know, if we've lost all this revenue because of that, we ought to think about changing that rule from May 1st through September 30th, okay, or September, or we don't need it then. Where we need it is only PGA Pass between October 15th and December 31st, when people leave again to go back up north. And then we have people that come down with guests during those holidays, and they can't play because it was backfilled with a PGA Pass. So I would say right now, if we may have lost the groups of 20 and 15 and 20 people, but I still think if people down here in Southwest Florida that aren't members of a club had an opportunity to come and play spring run at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or had an opportunity at 9 o'clock because we had open tee times, they'd play. There's people that will play.
Okay.
We may not get the big groups, and we may not get the ones he's trying to do, but we, as Jim said, he's absolutely right. My point is, we couldn't do it now anyways.
Okay, Bob?
And just maybe Jeff and the others could come up with some creative ideas to maybe attract the PGA Pass people to play later in the day. We'll give them a free lunch or whatever, free dozen balls. I don't know. Figure out something that might say, okay, I know I would like to play at 8, but I'll play at noon if I get something free. I don't know, but think outside the box a little bit on that.
So Mike, you want to come up with recommendations in with Jeff on when you think we could do something like that, bring back to the board maybe next week?
Yeah.
Okay. Vince, do you have something else to add?
Yeah, I'm not, going back to what Jim was talking about, the pool and everything else, my proposal is only golf. We can restrict, I think we should restrict the pool. I think it's a good idea. Tennis, pool, that's for someone else to discuss. But, and also, we certainly, if we're going to restrict the number of people in the clubhouse for dining, I don't think we would want outside, non-owners. We got to consider that guests. I don't think we have a lot of guests, but if we're going to start restricting that, we sure as hell wouldn't want an owner to be saying, "Oh, you can't come in because you got too many people in here." And oh, by the way, they're all guests. I was just talking golf.
Okay.
The rest of it needs consideration, but phase 2, as far as I'm concerned, I was just talking about golf.
Paula?
Question. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that right now in phase 1, we are still allowing walking golfers, not walking pedestrians, but walking golfers on the course right now in phase 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking at phase 2, and I've just read it, scanned it. There's nothing there about walking golfers. Is it assumed that in phase 2, when we now have reciprocals and PGA Pass people coming in, that we still allow walking golfers?
Yes.
Nothing in that list about it.
I'll put
It
that.
is. Okay,
We
it
still
is.
plan on having walkers.
Okay, that's fine. My next question, did you see Jim's email about problems with walking golfers?
No.
Is there anything we can do about that? Jim, you might want to talk to that. It was Jim Rock.
Yep. Well, Mike and I visited about that, and those were isolated instances, but it created a situation, and only one of those involved walker. The other was a cart play where they were doing repetitive play on the holes. But and we had another. I guess we had another one on the carts that was a father and 2 sons, Mike.
Yeah.
Which is limited to 2 people at a time. The other one is a guest. And even though they're a family member, they get charged a guest, but not treated as a guest. How does that work? Vince?
Yeah, there's 2 families right now, because there was another family, a gentleman with his daughter and son. They're the exact same thing as the other gentleman, where his daughter and son live with them. Okay, they're down here. They've got member numbers because and they've got member numbers because they're under 21. And are they on, do they have to be on the deed,
They
Mike?
don't have to be on the deed if they're
They
between.
don't have to be on the deed. So they have, because they're living with them, they're going to school down here, and they're actually members. They're not even guests. That's why they can play.
They have member numbers, but I don't know if they're members.
Oh,
They're
they have
junior
members.
members,
I
yes.
question
You
because
can
they're
read all the
playing.
stuff.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Explain it to me, will you please?
We've had
We talked about it.
quite a lot of discussion about this over the past 2 days. And the reason why is because, yeah, it's becoming obvious. There's no guests out there, and then people see it and they say, what's going on around here?
You
I
see
think-
the young people playing golf.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So I think we have to, maybe this isn't the meeting to do it. I think we should have, what you're talking about is not spelled out in the rules and regs anywhere. The only thing is spelled out is under 2.2, I think it is in the rules and regs.
2.2.
It talks about, you know, anyone who is between the ages of 10 and 20 is eligible to have a membership card, you know, get their face on it. They can swipe it. They can get it, you know, they can go and use it for membership privileges. The question is what are the membership privileges? There's nothing spelled out about that. It just basically, they have some nebulous privileges. I think at some point we should talk about this, and sooner than later, because it's going to become a big issue with, you know, over the summertime with fewer golf carts and in the fall.
It's a sticky situation in that, you know, it is being kind of picky, but it's not spelled out. So I think we do need to find a way to address that more clearly. I'm not saying limited anymore, but I think it does need to be clearly spelled out so it's more clear as to what privileges they do have at being from that age of 10 to 20 in that situation. So
Mike, do we have any more than the two families that we?
Yes, we thought there was maybe a handful, but I had Jeff go through and audit it, and there's probably 20 like this. Yeah.
20 families, 20 doors.
Yeah. Yeah.
and with there again with the limited carts, that becomes becomes an issue, I guess.
But I mean, it's never come up. No one's ever said anything or complained about it because, you know, we never said no guests. Now that we have no guests, it sticks out like a sore thumb. And, you know, I just figure I've never had a complaint about it. And in this past 4 days or so, I've had 5 or 6 complaints about it. Questions?
I had one today about a kid out there golfing, I think with his dad. So the problem is people see that and they assume they're guests. Actually, I assumed they were guests. I made the assumption 2 memberships per house. And that's it, and it really does say 2. Well, part of it for golf is 2 memberships per house, but it just has this clause in there where the younger people can get membership cards. Now, Jeff treats them as guests. They go under the members Chelsea points and stuff like that. Although I'm going to bring it up to the golf committee, he was not charging them guest fees, trying to get young people to golf and stuff like that. I'll bring it up to the golf committee and we're going to run that over and stuff. But that's what people are looking at and saying, hey, I can't get out and golf, and somebody's kids or some guests are. And these aren't people who live down here. They came down on vacation or they came down here now, but they're on the deed and they have the stuff and they're out using the golf course. And in Hidden Lakes, we had a problem with the pool. I mean, we have 12 to the pool and they came and there were 6. And they took up half of the things. And, you know, the people, same thing, are looking at should only be 2 members. The other kids aren't members. They're your guests. So it's something before October we need to straighten out.
Okay. Paula, thanks for bringing that up.
Jim?
Yeah, Judy?
I don't think it's a bad idea for us to let the membership know that there really are families here that have children in that age group that live here, you know, because people don't know.
These
20
people don't live here. They're down here on vacation. They don't live here.
I think the one family does, Jim.
Well, there is one family that does,
right.
But if you come and you come seasonally yourselves and your children come with you, though,
They're
That's
not
who
seasonal. They're down here for a couple of weeks, but that really is
They own-
here or there.
they
That's
own in
really
the,
not here or there. I mean, a rule's got to be the rule, whatever it is, whether you live down here or you come down for 2 weeks, whatever rule we decide on, it has to.
Right.
has
but
to-
what I'm saying is that just to help people to know that there are children, you know, quote unquote, younger children that exist here, that they're not all people that don't belong here.
That they do have benefits, just we need to more clearly define how that membership card can be used and when for
Yeah,
those people.
when we first moved here, our daughter had a card. She you know, could use the restaurant by herself because she
Mhm.
was in that age group and she had a card and she lived with us, you know.
Sure,
She
sure.
wasn't with us every minute, but
Okay, Vance?
Well, I was just going to throw it out for discussion. Should we grandfather people, but consider calling it two memberships per door max? Remember, actual.
I don't know, you got a grandfather. It's not clear that they have this authority. Is there much, I mean, I looked through it. It's a practice. It's not clear that your child between 18 and 20 can golf anytime they want, can play tennis. It just says that they can get a card mainly so they can use the restaurants.
But have we established a precedence though, Jim?
I
There's a precedence.
don't know,
in your-
have we?
If there was like a
It's been
couple,
going on- it's been going on for a long time.
they've been doing it, yeah. I
Well,
mean, maybe we need to nip it in the bud and take it for the future because those kids are going to eventually become 20, 21 and you don't have to worry about them anymore. You know,
And
just
we-
getting new ones.
you
we-
think
we
got
can reach
letters
out.
Well,
Yeah, once we clarify that, we can reach out to those specific people and tell them, here are the privileges that come with that card to those kids at this age group. And when we have restrictions like I have right now, that card can only be used in this manner, and it's not intended
Yeah,
for
I-
complete
I'm just
access to the club.
warning you when that comes out, and if we tell them that these other kids are not guests and have the stuff, we will get some letters. Because I tried to explain it to a few people at the pool the other day, and it was like, oh, it's only supposed to be, you know, and I told them we were going to work on it. So we have to be I'm just trying to warn us. We got to be delicate the way we put it out and the way we decide, because as you see, if you're down here, I mean, I'm getting emails all the time. Hey, at 9 o'clock, there was some kid out there. They know if a kid's out there, he's not a member. They think a member is the only two people in the house. So if we come out or tell them something else, we got to think about how we tell them that.
Well, I think when we clarify it too, we need to have some lead time where you say effective of this date, like if it's January 1, you know, we have clarified this and here's when this will happen.
And then,
Yeah, I don't
and then Mike has to go back to those other handful of families and tell them they have to stop.
Well, I don't have a problem. I don't think there's a problem until October. October, November is where we're going to get the next big problem. Once we start allowing guests here anyways, then they won't know if that's a guest or not.
Sure.
When we start limiting guests, that'll be a problem. When we tell all the members you can't bring a guest and then they see a kid out there, Mike will be getting all the phone calls.
Well, again, you go back to whether or not we start with October or November. Maybe our new fiscal year is when all these more stringent guidelines and defined
Yeah,
takes place, you know.
I agree. Something we got to do this summer. Not going to be
Yep.
easy to figure out, but something we got to do this summer.
Correct. Okay, anything else on the amenities and the guest access?
So,
You know,
so
both
the
parties, the
assumption-
ones that point out that they
is-
think they're wrong and then the ones that think they're right, there is no middle ground from those two, Jim, as you well know from the Hidden Lakes issue on the pool in that situation. So any
Jim,
further
just-
discussion? Vince?
Jim, to summarize then, we're going to ask Jeff and Mike to come back with some suggestions on when to start.
Yes, I think so.
I call it's guest PGA reciprocal, all the above, right?
Correct.
Does it make sense for something like this for Jeff and Mike to work with the golf committee to come, run it through a committee first and then bring it to the board after it's been vetted a little bit?
What were they going to add, the committee? What's that?
But why does it exist?
Yeah, Jim? Jim, you're on
You're
mute.
muted, Jim.
I'm going to have a committee meeting probably next week or the week after, but we're going to discuss other things. I don't know if allowing guests here should be a golf committee meeting decision. That's a board decision.
That's what I agree.
Once we allow guests, maybe the golf committee could figure that out. But I don't feel good asking the golf committee to make that decision. That's our decision. We will bring up how to use them and where we can do it and stuff like that. I mean, that's going to be on my agenda, but I don't think the golf committee should make a recommendation on a coronavirus issue.
I think it ought to originate with the board and then be supported by golf on how they would do any special things to go with
Yes,
that.
yeah, I agree.
Does that sound okay, Bob?
I'm not worried about it.
Okay, all right. Okay, do we move on to the Gatehouse project?
You're muted, Bill, Jim.
I wasn't talking.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the gatehouse.
Basically, if everybody saw the email that Mike sent to Paula, that's about where we're at. We're still moving forward. We don't have the actual documents that we could sign. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. The builder still says he can start.
Yeah.
And we believe we may be able to get the permits done. So, I mean, that's right where we're at. We don't have the actual documents or the actual final prices from the builder, unless Mike got something yesterday.
No, I have not yet. But I'll have it by early next week. I'll send it to you.
Okay. Bill?
Jim or Mike, we're not anticipating that the prices from the builder are going to be higher.
No,
No,
maybe less.
I hope they're less.
Yeah, me too.
Vince?
My question, Mike, other than the financial impact of this is all going to be a loan, right? We're going out and borrowing money for this whole thing, right?
For the project, the gatehouse. Yeah, we have $250,000 in CapEx from this current year that we're in. That's going to be applied to it. And
But that's CapEx. Isn't that money we're going to need for the shortfall that we're experiencing?
No, no, cash wise, we're doing okay. We lost, a couple $100,000 in income here.
And you're not done. You got the rest of the summer to go through.
Right, and that's what the PPP loan is for. PPP loan is for. So it's for paying the compensation for the employees and some utility costs and things like that.
But it doesn't cover revenue, lost revenue.
Cover it's covering. It's still helping make us whole. It's not for revenue. It's for compensation, but it still makes up some of that. Makes up most of it. So as far as the gatehouse goes, though, it would just be part of the line of credit.
Because the reason I say that, I think that from a perception standpoint, if they see us starting to tear up the golf course and shut down and start working on the gate, I think a lot of people are going to question, why are we doing that project when we just had this? We lost revenue. We got, we're going to create, we're not going to have as much income. We got all these expenses. I understand about the PP&E, but even at the PP&E, that runs out at some point, right, Bob?
Yes.
So
Yeah, the loan, the loan is for 740,000 or so. And we figure that right now, Michelle's calculations, which I've looked at, get us pretty close to getting the whole thing forgiven. We can't say that yet because there's still a lot of unknowns about it, and she's still working with people on it for the next couple of weeks. But that's
that covers how many months?
Even though it doesn't offset the revenue directly, it offsets the expenses, so it has the same effect on net income. So that's 700,000.
Yeah, but that's like 2 months worth of payroll, right?
A little more than 2 months, yes.
Right. So we got to go all the way till the end of my point is, I think that we're going to have to address. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we shouldn't do the project. I mean, we're going to have to be able to say to people that this is a long-term project. We're borrowing the money, and we're going to have to pay for it off long-term. And our anticipation is this whole COVID-19 thing, coronavirus, isn't going to last, 6 years.
Yeah, and I might just add that, and I've had conversations with Mike, that you know, the project is there's some things in the project that we need to get done. We've been putting it off, kicking the can down the road too long, and we need to do something there at the entranceway. There's some other things that are more discretionary, at least in my mind. I don't know about other people, and whether the project can be split up so we do a piece now and a piece later, recognizing that it may be more expensive overall to do it that way, still might be a better option than doing the whole project right now, given what you're talking about, Vince. And the fact that the future, 2021, is an unknown as to what the finances are going to look like. And we may, you know, depending on how things fall out with this budget and how we look at those assumptions and the implications financially to the budget of the assumptions for 2021, are we going to have an increase more than 3% in the fees? I don't know. Nobody knows at this point, but
No, but I think it's
talking
unavoidable.
about if we have a high increase in fees and we're out there doing this big project without making any changes to it, it makes me uneasy, I guess is what I would say.
Jim?
Two things I'm doing the project. It is going to be hard to do it this year, but it's going to, if we don't do it this year, it's going to cost us more.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. And actually, this is the best year to actually get the gatehouse done because we're going to have less traffic going through. We're not going to have all the big events and everything else going through. Now, I'm not sure when, even, I guess we can talk to the builders because there are a few things that because we talked about the gates at you know, long time and stuff to do the gates. And we decided to do the gates and stuff like that. There is a price, and I'm going to throw out maybe $100,000 that we can stub out the gates and not do the gates and save that money. And we may not even have to make that decision in May. We can talk to the builder because until we go past, even when he starts building, until he orders the gates to be made, we can change that. The sign, I mean, that's $20,000. I mean, there is some money we can save on it, but if we didn't get the loan, I would be in your camp of saying maybe we shouldn't do it. But since we got the loan and we kick this can down, and we're gonna have, if we don't do that, we're gonna have to fix some of the road and everything anyways, which is gonna be a real waste of money because we're gonna have to rip it up later on. I'm thinking at least we get the basic done as long as we get our permits. Whether we do the whole thing and the gates and stuff like that, we still got a couple of weeks to make that decision before we sign the paperwork. And I would agree with you, Bob. That's something we got to look at. Do we really want to spend? And I'll have it figured out. Do we want to spend $100,000 on the gates now, or do we just want to, what I call, stub them out so later on we can do the gates and stuff like that? That's a valid point, and in a week or two we'll have the numbers and we can look at that.
Okay, Paula?
Just a comment and a question. Question, when you're talking gates, Jim, was my understanding that the reason we had to reconfigure sewage and water lines on the driveway, next to the driveway coming into the community, was so that the supports, the foundation for those gates could be drilled down into the ground because
Yes.
the pipes were in the way. So when you're saying 100,000, and here's my problem, we really have to go ahead with that moving of pipes, etc.
Yes.
Even if we choose not to immediately spend money on the gates. Is
Yes.
that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that was one thing I wanted to make clear. So
Okay.
essentially, we are committing to putting in those gates because we're going to create immediately at the outset the foundation to make them happen.
Yeah, we would be spending, and I'm going to say about $40,000. We don't have the price to prep it to do the gates. So if we never did the gates, we would have wasted $40,000. But if we're going to do the gates, we got to do it now because we're going to tear up the roadway. And, you know, so you're right. We would be basically committing at some time in the future to doing the gates. Otherwise, we move the pipe, which I'm throwing that number out for. I don't know what it'll be. It's going to be only one pipe, not two pipes. We would have wasted that money. We don't have to move it if we're not going to do them. You are correct.
One more thing. Thank you. That's one thing I think needed to be clarified. The other thing, I sent that email out when I questioned going ahead with the entryway, because I felt much the same way that Vince expressed. I think we're going to get some pushback. Like, why are we doing this now when we have such a deficit? And I think we have to be prepared to deal with that reaction in the community.
I think you're right. And I think that Jim and his crew will be able to present a timeline that shows if in fact we do part of it, here's how much would be deferred to the second phase. Here's how much we anticipate it's going to go up into that piece. And then looking at, I mean, we've only got about a 2-week window. It'd be nice if we had 6 weeks, because we could start addressing the budget for next year and what impact that entryway would have on that. But, you know, that construction cost is going to go up, 8 to 10%, somewhere around there. I think on the golf course, they told us 5 to 8% when we were going to delay it for a year. So, you know, those dollars are wasted dollars also when you look at that. So we're going to have wasted dollars either way in that piece. Vince?
Yeah. My question, it wasn't my question, my proposition was, I think we need to, again, prepare for how we're going to communicate it, because as I understand, we're borrowing the money. It's a long-term borrowing issue, right? It isn't like we're using all current cash. Okay, we're going to borrow the money. So it's a timing issue, and I think stressing the fact of the potential increased cost, okay, whether we defer some things or not, you know, whether essentially there's going to be gates, so we better put the pipe work and foundation work in there. But I think we ought to know what that is and be able to communicate it.
Sure.
What I really would like to know, and maybe for explaining or not going forward, if we have to do, well, I'm calling it the worst case, phase 2 all through the next fiscal year. Because I think in general, we feel comfortable that beyond next spring, there's going to be some things coming out with vaccines and other things that are going to allow people to get back to what we would have had before, as far as going to restaurants and opening up our club and 2 people in a cart. That difference, how much would it have been the difference between our annual assessment per door by doing this phase 2 versus if we didn't have to do, if we had a regular season, what would the difference have been? Okay, because, and I don't even have a feel for that number. I don't know, you know, you're talking 847 doors. So if it's $1,000, that's $847,000 cost or lost income somehow. Okay, there's a number in there of whatever it is, and I'd like to know what that is so we can explain to people, you know, that this is what it is. And I view it as a one-time. It's next year, you know, it's next fiscal year. It's not every year. All right, that number then shouldn't repeat itself the next November.
Well, Vince, let me throw this out too, and the finance committee will do their work on this and have it clearly identified on that with Mike's crew getting stuff to him. But I think that when we go working up that budget, we need to clearly define what the annual increase in the assessment's going to be, plus kind of the COVID-19 surcharge onto that piece that adds together for the overall piece.
That would be the difference. That's what I'm talking about.
Because people would be able to expect then in that next year that, and we go back to normalcy, that additional surcharge would be off of that, and they would feel more comfortable in conveying it that way. That's just my opinion. So
that was my whole point.
Okay. Jim?
Let me just, and actually the new finance committee, you have to look at it, but when the old finance committee looked at it, we will probably have to borrow money, but it will only be for a month or 2. It depends on when the bills come in. Before this COVID and everything like that, even if we had to borrow a couple $100,000, as soon as our dues came in or assessments came in October, we're going to pay that off. So we would be, before this, the plan was that this would be paid off. This is not a long-term, like we're going to borrow it for 10 years or whatever. The plan was before COVID, before the summer, is that this would be paid off. In fact, there is a chance we wouldn't even have to borrow money. It just depends on when the builder, put his bills in and stuff like that. So it's a short, may have to borrow money, but it was a short term, like Mike said, just on a revolving credit loan. That was the plan before COVID, and we'll learn this summer from the finance committee where we're really at with that and where we're going to be at next year.
Sure, and some of that's going to be self-funded regardless, right, Mike? I mean, through our own internal cash on hand and cash flow, we take care of that and pay it back. So it's not like it's a long-term debt for that full amount of whatever that is.
I was separating out the gate from my discussion. The gate discussion is going to be done, and it's going to be done one way or another. I was just saying, forget the gate, I put that whole thing aside. That's a cash flow as far as like you just said, Jim, it's a cash flow. I'm saying if this would have been a normal year with normal expenses and operating expenses, our assessments would have been X, okay? But they're not, they're going to be Y. And to your point, the difference between X and Y is the COVID effect. It's of having to do a phase 2 rather than normalcy, going into normal. I would like that to me. I'm interested in what that number is going to look like. I don't know what it is. I don't have a feel for it per door.
Okay.
Just to summarize, we are using the line of credit to pay for the total construction of the entryway. We agreed on that a long time ago. That's one thing, that's one debt. And now, to make up for the lost revenue due to COVID, the assessment will be increased to cover that deficit. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what I think.
Yeah, but you said that wrong. We're not financing the whole gatehouse on.
I know we're
Yes.
not. Get it.
But yeah, that's correct.
But
I think that's
line of credit for the gatehouse to whatever amounts needed.
Right.
But the missing revenue, the deficit will be made up by increasing the assessment. Is that correct?
No, for next year, there's two different things. There's this year, currently right now, that's what the PPP loan is for. And then
Yes.
forgiveness, which hopefully will cover this loss of revenue. Like we lost $135,000 just in golf just last month. Okay, so that's going to hopefully cover this. But next year, we're budgeting for phase 2 restrictions in season, which is going to kill us for income association tournaments. We normally have these buffets of 200 people or 150 people. We're going to be down to doing 100 at a time or 75 at a time or 72. So what he's talking about is the difference between what we normally would do and this phase 2 restrictions. That difference is going to have to go onto the assessment for next year. So I just cursory this morning looked at a loss of a couple $100,000 in season from food and beverage, a few $100,000 from golf, and that's say 500,000 divided by 847 is $470 some. So you're looking at the operating assessment going up by that $470 or $500. That's that COVID. That's the COVID. What do you call it? Surcharge. So
Okay.
Right.
You're calling it a COVID surcharge. I'm seeing it. We're paying ahead on our assessment in this November 20 for the expected COVID deficit.
Correct.
Yes, that's how I see it.
Okay.
Okay.
And I would keep, to me, in my mind, that's separate from the gatehouse, because the gatehouse,
Yeah.
I know it's cash flow, it's not separate, Jim, I agree, from cash flow. But from a standpoint of, the expense of COVID is what's killing us on the assessment.
Yep.
Well, we have to get the baseline on what that assessment's going to be and not intertwine it with the gatehouse project, but we'll be responsible in what we're going to do with that gatehouse project as a secondary piece into that, but it's really not related to the actual operating assessment in that piece.
Okay.
Bill?
Hey, I'm going to ask Bob this question. Bob, I guess it was a week or so ago when, I guess it was at the April board meeting when you presented your baseline case and what you felt was perhaps
Yeah.
a worst case scenario.
There it is right there.
And that worst case scenario, or either one, the baseline or the worst case scenario, was that projection by yourself and your committee taking us to the end of fiscal year, this fiscal year only?
Yes.
Okay. So then we still have the additional next season phase 2 deficit that we're talking about now.
Right,
Right,
but keep in mind that the case that I presented did assume 0 PPP loan, okay?
Yeah, okay.
But with the PPP loan and the forgiveness later on, that largely offsets the operating impact on 2020 fiscal year.
That's significant. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
We better get it.
Well, we got it.
We got it.
We just wanna
Yeah, I
get
know,
forgiveness.
but I mean, the forgiveness coming.
We better get the forgiveness is what you're saying. And
Yes.
Michelle's done a
Yes.
yeoman's work developing a big spreadsheet on that looks pretty significant. So I think we look okay.
So the gatehouse, we hope to hear something of a final format on that so we can have a further discussion. We want to move on now to the contingency budgets for 2021.
I think that's basically just what we were talking about right here.
Yep.
Right.
Mhm.
Now,
Well, Mike,
I
it
will
made
tell
me
you,
feel better, Mike, when you threw that number out of $500. I had no idea, but and to Jim's point, if we identify that when you do that breakdown of what the assessment's made up of, and you call that the COVID factor, whatever it is, and it won't, you're right, Jim. Part of it'll go away, but part of it'll be absorbed by the increase going into next year, the following year. But yeah.
yeah, nobody will like the assessment, but we get a lot of trust and out of that if it backs out that next year minus any increases that go into that in that piece.
Plus,
I will update it.
if Bob is presenting it, everybody will totally like it. So
Sure. I will update everybody real quick on we have another meeting on the Brooks Council of Presidents this Monday to talk about this development and our action and what we're going to do. So I should have more to report to you next week off of that piece on what's going on there. They had another meeting, and Jim Ward is on that too. So I have the utmost confidence in Jim protecting the best interests of Brooks, Spring Run, and the Commons Club going forward in that. Any other questions or statements that we need today? Bob?
Do we need to approve the minutes like we do with a regular meeting, or do we do it at the regular meeting? Minutes from last week that we all reviewed.
You can just do it if you want to.
I kept my thought, Bob, on that. Good question. Was at the regular board meeting to bring all those minutes forward and approve them, but maybe we need to approve them on a weekly basis. I mean, I'm open to whatever the board wants to do on that. But
why don't we
Jim?
just approve it?
I think we can do either, but talking about minutes and recording, it just kind of dawned on me, now that we're recording these, I think the state of Florida considers recording like a document. Should we contact the attorney, and should we have a policy? How long are we going to keep these recordings? If we don't have a policy, we got to keep them forever. I would suggest a policy where we keep the recordings for, like 30 days or until the next meeting. When the minutes are approved at the next meeting, then they don't have to keep the recordings of the meetings. I think we'd have to check with the attorney. I think we can do that. Maybe the May meeting would be the time to do that, put that on there and actually have a retention policy on these. I like the way we're doing it. I like the recording, but sooner or later in 7 years, I don't know where Mike's going to store all the meetings, the videos of all the meetings.
I don't think it takes up a lot of space though, actually, Jim. I think
Well,
digitally it's small, so.
it's not that, it's in 7-10 years, wherever they're on, the format changes, and then you gotta pay to get the format changed,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it has to be readable.
Yeah.
I just think it's simpler if we just decide now, you know, something simple like that. How long do we want to keep? We want to keep him a year. You just say you're going to keep it a year. Then if he keeps it longer than a year, that's fine. But he only has to produce them and keep them for a year, whatever we decide.
Okay, so do we need to check with council first before we act on that?
Yeah, I'll call him.
Okay,
I think he could write up something. Yeah, I think it's pretty simple.
okay, then we can act on that next week according to what his opinion is in that.
I think we should act on that at a regular meeting, to be honest with you. That the one on the 28th. or
May 26th, yeah, whatever, yeah.
Whichever day the actual.
27th.
About the 28th.
Is it 28th? Let's see,
Thursday, right? Yeah.
13th, 20th, 20, yeah, it is 28th. Excuse me.
Yeah, just personally, that should be at a regular board meeting that we, because that's a policy that we're gonna, or a rule that we're gonna put in place.
All right.
As far as the minutes here, if, I'll make a motion to approve them if we want to do that.
Approve the minutes from last week or approve the minutes from today?
From last week.
Oh, okay.
Second.
Did somebody second?
I'll second.
Okay, Judy second. Any discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of approving last week's minutes from, what was that, the 7th?
Yes.
Right.
From the 7th, signify by raising your right hand, say aye.
Yeah,
Okay, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks for bringing it up, Bob.
You know, for point of information, Hertz is filing bankruptcy, and we have several restaurants that are closing, Applebee's, and a lot of them on Coconut, they're shutting down, not opening up. So this is really taking a big effect down here. So a lot of places going under.
Wow.
Yep, yep.
That Hertz is going to be a big deal.
Well, they just filing for reorganization on the
We don't know.
Hertz.
That's why I asked the question. When I heard about it today, I was getting a haircut, and I was being informed by my barber. But they were telling me, and they said that, I said, was it chapter 7 or chapter 11? Because that's the difference. I can't imagine them doing liquidation. I would
No.
always think it's got to be reorganization, you know, chapter 11, if they're doing it, which they probably are. But I understand that they're going to turn all their cars loose to the used car market. It's going to be devastating to the used car market, they say.
If anybody's driven by the airport and seen all the cars, the rent-a-cars that are parked all over the place. It's
Yeah.
amazing that we have that many rent-a-cars in our, you know, in our midst in June, in January and February, March. I mean, you guys aren't down here, but it is full of rent-a-cars all over the place.
Didn't they burn down?
500 cars.
Fire?
No, that wasn't all of them. There's a lot more.
No.
Yeah,
37 cars.
what's amazing is to drive by the airport and still see all those burn up cars sitting there.
Yeah, well, what are you doing?
Yeah. But, you know, that when they do that, obviously that's going to have a ripple effect back now to all the automotive manufacturers because,
Yep.
you know, they're probably going to, if they go bankrupt, they're the ones that are going to get hit with a lot of these cars that aren't paid for, number one, and everything. But going forward, there's going to be, until this thing gets resolved, they're not going to be selling any of those cars either. So
True, true.
it's a big deal.
Well, and all the canceled sports events, et cetera, where they don't, and think of Disney World, you know, all those people made use of those vehicles. It's just, they can't relocate the cars either. They're just stuck with them, so.
Right. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Wow.
All right. Well, we're going to plan on next Thursday at 2 o'clock again.
Yep.
Okay with everybody?
Yep.
All right. See you then.
Everybody
Night.
stay
All right.
See ya.
Very well.
All right.
Have a good
Well-
week.
Bye.
How do I get out of here?